Hello there, I'm Azara Tagaya, your host for Ringgit Sense, the show where we talk about topics on money and personal finance. This week, we're visiting the topic of healthcare. Now, most of you know that the cost of healthcare has gone up, and thus, health insurance has become an important asset. But the question that many of you might be asking is, what type of health insurance plan should you get? And do men and women need different health insurance plans? Well, the next time you talk to an insurance agent, we're going to give you some talking points on what to ask. With us in the studio is Annie Hor, a licensed financial advisor, to help us. Hi, Annie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Azaria. Nice to meet you again.
Yeah, nice to have you again on Ringgit Sense. And this time we're talking about healthcare. Okay, so one of the first questions we want to ask is we want to address this question to our audience members who might be young working adults working their first job, maybe earning around 2,500 or 3,000 ringgit. So what type of health insurance should they get, or should they be able to afford?
I think the rule of thumb is always about 5 to 10% of your take-home pay to put it aside for insurance. So for someone who has just graduated or just starting employment, they should start look at life insurance, healthcare, and critical illness, something that covers everything. And for 150 a month to 200, they can easily get something like 100,000 critical illness, life coverage, TPD coverage, which is total permanent disability, and a simple basic medical card. So this is something that I think for all people who just started working to explore. Because when I was working back then, when I started work back then, after I knew I was going to be confirmed within 3 months, that is when I start exploring my insurance options and to ensure that you're covered so that you do not burden your family. And that was my thought at the time. And that should be the thought that people should plan and towards as well.
Okay, yeah. So what if your company already provides health insurance for you? Should you opt for your own personal insurance, or should you wait until you're able to afford it?
The word afford is something that, nobody, every time people say afford, wait till I can afford it.
Yeah.
It usually sometimes never happen, all right, because that was not part of their budget. But if you put it as part of the budget, then the affordability is no longer an issue, all right. Healthcare insurance, yes, when your company covers you healthcare, it is also still important to ensure that you have your own medical insurance, because a few reasons is, unless you're going to plan to work in the same company and you can guarantee that the company will continue coverage for you. Yeah. Otherwise, if you can't do that, you better have your own medical insurance, because when you leave to join another company, perhaps, you're not covered. So and then if you're not insurable, or maybe you're not healthy and to buy insurance later, then you might not be able to get health insurance for your later age. So it is still important to ensure that you have your own medical insurance. And that time when I was telling you I was working, I actually have my own coverage from my company, but I still opt to buy my own to secure and locked in for my future years.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between when you're single versus when you already have a family. Really? So if you're single, should you opt for a life insurance? And what about when you have children? Do children necessarily need to have life insurance?
Okay, so there's two questions here. Yeah? So when you're single, then you have to ask yourself, do you have any family who depends on you? Perhaps like old age parents or special siblings that dependent on you. If yes, and you give them money every month, in your absence, their money stops. So then life insurance is very important for you. Yeah. Or if you have debt, for example, you bought a property, but you didn't buy an MRTA, for example, then you need to have an insurance to ensure that your debt will be taken care of when you're not around, so that you can pass on the property to your family, for example. So, but for people who are, for children, whether do they need life insurance? I think the parents need more life insurance than the children. Children needs healthcare and medical insurance, or your critical illness insurance, more than life insurance.
Okay, so now there have been cases where people say that insurance for women actually covers certain aspects of a woman's lifestyle. So is it really necessary for men and women to have different types of health insurance? Okay,
in Malaysia, we have like women insurance, female care insurance. So I think 2 or 3 companies provide that. All right, so mentioned like Prudential, they cover female illnesses. Actually, majority of the company covers female illnesses right now. But there is also another, but that only covers the specific critical illness for specific organs on female. So, but if you do not strike with that illnesses, then you're not able to claim. So it's only for female illness, female organs, for example. In the market right now, because we also, I think the market does not want to be discrimination against men. So what the market has advanced to cover early stage critical illness, which your early stage critical illness also cover early stage for women and men. All right, but for women, they have a plan like they can cover for pregnancy complications. If you're planning to have, plans to have be pregnant in future, then you can start covering for that. So pregnancy complications in future, so you can able to start covering them now.
Okay, so would this actually cost more?
Yes, it will. It will be, but I would advise.
Will it be significant?
It's not. It could be a complement part of your existing plan, but I would always advise that always take baby steps and cover the essential one first before you cover the things like your female illnesses, the early critical illness. Make sure you're covered for the basic. And the basic are things like, for example, healthcare, medical hospitalization. Second thing is your critical illness. And how much of critical illness would people need? I would say an average of 300,000 in today, at least have a coverage of 300,000 minimum. Okay, and then if you're covered with for after this, then you can look at early critical illness coverage. You can look at your female illnesses coverage, or even right now there is companies who provide specific coverage for only the top 3 critical illness in the market. And the top 3 critical illness are cancer, heart attack, and stroke. Claims have shown that it's very high. So insurance companies see a need that people should be covering more of this, and that's why they start providing solutions, products that are specifically catered to like cancer, specifically catered to heart attack, stroke, for example.
What about, what do they cover in terms of complications for pregnant women or expected mothers? Okay, so
under the female illnesses plan, right? So that varies according to companies. So in case there is pregnancy, there is a complications of having a hole in a heart, for example, or when the baby has, there's various terms for that. But there's one coverage that women can buy when they are expecting. They can actually cover like while the baby is still in the womb. All right, so about 18 weeks usually, when you're pregnant, within 18 weeks, you can start covering the baby and the mother as well. So what kind of coverage we're looking at is like number one, in case when there is congenital conditions, conditions where usually your hospitalization healthcare do not cover. So this will cover you for the next 3 or 5 years, depending on insurance companies. Okay, there are some hospital bills lah. Then there's also things like jaundice, for example. If your newborn baby prone to jaundice, and then they also cover jaundice. And there are also plans like if touch wood, there's a baby that passed, an infant that passed away, or mother that's passed away, during this period, they are also covered.
Okay, some interesting points to note there about the types of insurance policies for women and men. It's actually different. Okay, so we're going to go and take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about healthcare plans and what would actually be the right healthcare plan for you. More on that when we come back with Annie Ho on Ringgit Sense. Back with us on Ringgit Sense, you're still with me, Azara Tagaya, and I am still with our guest, Annie Ho, a licensed financial advisor, to tell us more about healthcare. Okay, Annie, back on the topic of healthcare. Before the break, we talked about the different types of health insurance for men and women. Okay, now we want to get more into, that was for single people, people who are not married. So now let's imagine you're in the next phase of your life. You're getting married, you're going to start a family. So once a couple actually gets married and has a child on the way, what areas should they actually be looking at in terms of coverage?
Okay, when you're single, then you're only taking care of yourself. You're only concerned about yourself so that you don't burden other people. But when you're married and you have going into a marriage life, or married or having children, for example, then you have more mouths to feed. So you need to now think about, oh, is my spouse working? All right, if my spouse is not working, I must make sure that in my demise or absence, I must be able to provide something so that my spouse will not have to worry about her lifestyle or her maintenance of her expenses or children, for example. But of course, there are people who say, my spouse can go to work, right? But your children cannot go to work because they are still below age, the minor age. So even if the spouse would choose to go to work, they still need to take care of the welfare of the children.
Yep.
So then life insurance is very important, all right? An income replacement to make sure that in case anything happen, their income tak putus, they will still continue, they will still flow. Third thing is that they must also make sure that their current healthcare, medical is sufficient. Because the last thing that they want is that something, unforeseen circumstances to move their wealth. For example, your children. You must also make sure that your spouse and children have medical insurance, not only you yourself. Kalau your wife or your husband tak ada medical insurance, then if there's a hospitalization need, then you will need to take out your money to pay for the bills. So that is why it's essential to make sure that your whole family is covered, right? But the main thing is to make sure that you, that's a breadwinner, and the spouse is covered more than the children.
Okay.
That is more important.
Okay, so moving on from single life to family life, of course you're going to have to review the insurance that you get. So how often should someone, and at which stages of their life should you review?
We recommend about every 2 years to review your insurance, but more if you have circumstances that changes. For example, your parents have started to depend on you, then you need to start reviewing. Or you have a newborn children, then you need to review earlier than 2 years, for example. Otherwise, always review 2 years, every 2 years, to make sure that your coverage is sufficient and still relevant. Because sometimes insurance that maybe you bought like 5-10 years ago may not be relevant for today. So you must make sure that the coverage is still relevant and sufficient.
Okay. So let's say you have a young family of 4 with a joint income of around 6,000 ringgit. So how much coverage should you actually get for your family?
Okay, so it really also comes back down to what their needs are. So as a start, basic, I always say 5 to 10% of your take-home pay to cover for your family insurance. So let's just say this case will be 10%. So 600 budget for the whole family insurance. So you need to look at 600 the insurance, who gets a bigger coverage? Who should get a bigger coverage? With the for example, the husband be getting a more coverage in terms of life and medical, and then the spouse would need more medical and critical illness, while the children only concentrate on healthcare like your hospitalization. So it really depends. So, but the budget just play around between 300 to 600. For the family insurance.
Okay. Now let's talk about the exclusion list. What type of things do medical cards usually don't cover?
Okay. I think the misconception is that when people have a medical card, they think they're fully covered. They don't have to worry. But that's not the case. Because if you look at your insurance policies, there is a list of things that are not included. And most of the time, people don't read it. All right? I give you an example. What is not covered? So if someone who goes for has a heart attack and needed a cardiac pacemaker, like a battery to put into their heart, right? So your hospital bill would cover the hospitalization procedure, but they do not cover that battery, that cardiac pacemaker. So you need to pay on your own. So that's one thing that's not covered. For example, also if someone has a knee surgery, all right, and then the doctor say you need to have braces, knee braces, and you also need crutches. Accessories are not covered. So some of the times, clients think that their insurance fully cover everything, which is not the case.
I see.
So you need to really know what is covered, what is not covered. If it's not covered, you need to prepare your emergency fund so that at least you can cover for those things that are not covered under your healthcare. Okay,
so the way to get prepared for things that are not covered, you should actually just read the fine print.
Yes, read the fine prints, understand better. If not sure, ask. So that you are very clear about, because even the fine prints will not elaborate things I've just elaborated. It's very much 1 or 2 liners, right? But it is good to know what is and what's not covered. And for example, like a person who is hospitalized, there is a pre-hospitalization and a post-hospitalization. A pre means before you are hospitalized, then there is maybe an ultrasound, an x-ray that you have done. Perhaps you can claim for that within a certain period. But for post-hospitalization means after you're hospitalized and then you want to claim for follow-up treatments, there is also a specific number of days you can claim. So you have to read your fine prints and to know how many days are those.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about investment-linked insurance. What exactly is investment-linked insurance, and what kind of returns can you expect to get?
Okay. Investment-linked is a type of insurance. It's not an investment. So I think also the myth that people think, oh, I buy investment-linked, I'm buying investment. It's not. Always remember that the reason behind buying insurance is for protection. It's to protect you in case something happens. All right. So investment-linked, because the underlying asset is that they invest in funds, unit trust funds. All right. But I would rather say, I would advise clients and say, if you want insurance, go for, like, for example, take an investment link. But if you want investment, go for unit trust, for example. Separate it, do not mix it, because your insurance is just for protection.
Okay. Now, how should you actually pay for your health coverage? Should you pay yearly or monthly, or
your premium?
Yeah.
If you use investment link, it's good to pay monthly.
Monthly.
Because there's no additional cost, so it's good to pay monthly. But if you are buying a non-investment link policy, certain policies may charge you interest for paying monthly. So just check out which policies and do they have an interest on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's shared responsibility payment? Okay.
Share responsibility payment is what we call co-insurance. It's something that if you utilize this medical card, for example, then do you need to pay anything? So apart from the exclusions and all, so certain companies, for example, they charge you a co-insurance like a flat $300 when you utilize a medical card. Some charges you a 10% of your hospital bill to maybe a cap of 1,000. So it really depends, or some charges as low as $50 just for using the medical card. So this is what we call sharing the cost with the insured and the client. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Annie, for sharing with us today on healthcare. As always, a joy to have you on the show, because you give us so many new information to actually think about. Thank you again.
Thank you, Azara.
Okay, guys, we've come to the end of the interview. Now, hopefully you know more now than you knew before about healthcare and health insurance. We're going to be taking a short break on Ringgit Sense, and when we come back, we'll be talking more about personal finance. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Ringgit Sense. Now, affordable housing is an often debated issue. Among some of the questions asked is, how much should an affordable home cost? Should it be 300,000 or 500,000? Now, a research by Khazanah Research Institute a few years ago found that a lot of the homes being built in Kuala Lumpur and Penang were severely unaffordable. This led to a lot of homes being left unsold. What this means is that those in the B40 group, those earning less than 3,000 ringgit, will find it hard to own a home in the Klang Valley. And if the prices of homes continue to rise, even those in the M40 group will find it hard to own a home. So that's why the government is coming up with a new national housing policy. The new national housing policy is set to be unveiled in September. Housing and local government minister Zuraida Kamarudin said the matter was aimed at increasing the ownership of low-cost houses to low-income earners, or the B40. She addressed the issue in a session in Parliament last week while responding to a question by Batu Gajah MP Sivakumar Varatharaju Naidu on the government's plans to boost the construction of low-cost houses for low-income earners in the span of the next 5 years.
Untuk merancangkan lagi pembangunan rumah kos rendah di bawah Kerajaan Pakatan Harapan yang banyak kali kita menyebutkan bahawa kita amat prihatin tentang nasib mereka. Beberapa perkara yang akan kita masukkan dalam polisi-polisi baru termasuk meminta kerjasama yang kuat dengan kerajaan negeri agar memberikan tanah yang secukupnya, dan juga tanah-tanah ini mestilah dengan sempurna dengan infrastruktur. Kita tidak mahu mereka beri tanah-tanah yang terletak di tempat-tempat yang jauh-jauh.
She said the policy which is being reviewed will address the definition of affordable housing, the future building concept, size and amenities that the ministry intends to incorporate in public and private housing schemes.
InsyaAllah kita juga akan meminta agar compliant cost seperti utility, TNB, air dan juga elektrik diambil kos itu oleh agensi-agensi kerajaan. Dan yang keempatnya juga kita melihat untuk membina kos rumah rendah ini dalam satu volume yang banyak untuk mencapai target, kita akan melihatkan material atau bahan-bahan untuk membina rumah ini dengan bahan-bahan yang baru yang dapat kos efektif.
After the session, Zuraida told the press conference that the review of the policy is also meant to address the current oversupply situation faced by the high-end property market. Zuraida said for now, the ministry has generally frozen most of the approvals for high-end developments and will re-look at the demands for specific ranges of housing projects. For this, the government will have to sit down with the developers and help them on the issue of oversupply. At the ministerial level, the importance and need to build the affordable homes will continue as the government realizes a need for it. Zuraida also acknowledged the concerns raised by think tank Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, or IDEAS, in a report released last week, which had warned the government to be ready for the bubble in the Malaysian property market to burst as a result of the spectacular growth of the high-end property segment and the risk that this could lead to an economic crisis in the country. The report lists that the focus on the high-end segment is justified by high demand, which is followed by heavy investment in that sector. However, it now appears that unexplained profit opportunities are disappearing with a capital allocation restructuring seen to be necessary. The report also states that the government needs to be ready for the bubble to burst and the risk that this could lead to an economic crisis. While various methods may be proposed to make housing affordable, the best solution is actually to raise income of those living in areas with severely unaffordable housing. Bank Negara has introduced the idea of a living wage, basically how much one has to earn monthly to live a meaningful life in the Klang Valley. According to Bank Negara, this living wage basically serves as a guide for employers to pay their employees according to the needs of minimum acceptable living standards. So, what are they? For single adults, it's 2,700 ringgit a month. Married couples without children is 4,500 ringgit a month. For a family of 4 with 2 children, they need to earn at least 6,500 ringgit. This, of course, has to be matched by an increase in productivity to justify the salary. In the meantime, while the government works on the solution, fresh graduates entering the workforce should be prepared to be renting for a longer time. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We hope the discussion today about health insurance has given you some food for thought on the type of coverage that you need. If you want to watch today's interview and past stories that we've done on personal finance, go to our Facebook page, Ringgit Sense TV3. I'm Azara Tagaya. We'll see you again next week. Until then, invest and save wisely.